On this episode of Amy Makes a Video After Reading a Very Bad Story... Hey guys, it's Amy here, back again with another video. Nature versus nurture has often been compared upon to explain how people grow up, turn out the way they are, and gain the personality traits that they get. And authors have decided to take this argument to the grave. Today we're talking about character backstory and how authors put a lot of attention and detail into it even when they really don't need to, because it's actually not as important as everyone thinks. More and more stories that I read include a character's backstory in order to explain the entire plot, a person's entire character, and so much more, therefore making it less and less a focus on the actual plot of the story or character development that the characters go through in the story. And it makes for quite slow and repetitive reading experiences. In this video, I'm going to explain why backstory should be focused on way less than people are telling you to. Simply put, a character's backstory is there to explain how they are at the start of the story. It explains why they are the way that they are, why they have certain skills, how they got into that situation from the very first line of chapter 1. I have more information on backstories in this video up here. It is definitely worth a watch if you need help building backstories, and it falls on very, very simple foundations. This makes sure that your characters just don't come out of a void, even though sometimes that's the purpose of a character. But a backstory should be very simple, and it should explain things when seen fit. It can often be incorporated into the story and explained as need be. We don't need to have stuff at the very beginning explaining a character's backstory, as we can naturally have it come in throughout. A backstory should definitely be considered for a character of importance in your novel. That's even if the backstory won't be portrayed in a typical flashback or prologue chapter sort of way that is popular today. Because the reasons why a character may do things may not align with a certain stereotypical trait. Like the bad guy kills kittens because they're evil, or the good guy saves kittens because they're good. A backstory can explain why a person feels a certain way when that moment comes up, so that the evil guy will save the kittens because they had a very special pet when they were a child. I say can, not will, because some people do just a little bit more, and more than the readers need and want. The thing with backstories is that authors believe this is the only thing that can motivate characters and give them agency and personality. There's way much more than that, and so many more points that you can take on rather than just the past. Take my girl Abby Tucker from ASTER'S CODA Exposure. Her backstory does a decent job to explain her physically fit state, the sass and quips that come out of her mouth, and the things that she finds normal in her world. It, however, does not explain her motivation to simply survive with all the shit and chaos going on in her life. That just comes from being human. And it's one that doesn't arise until the first act, within the present of the first act. Yet time and time again in so many other stories, crucial character traits are explained via backstory. This is not a rule. You guys know this isn't the only way, right? A past does not define a person. There are plenty of people who don't want their past to define them, both in and out of books. Think of it this way. If the way that a character changes and develops within a story happens in the present, then so much more about your character does not have to come from the past. But when it does matter, these authors, they need to take their backstories to the Antiques Roadshow to show them truly how much it means, which is way less than they think. It's not worth as much as you think, darling. On more than one occasion, I have heard about authors writing out characters' backstories in the form of a novella or a short story before they have even written the actual book. Can I just say, don't? And then they end up taking this entire backstory and end up putting it in a prologue or a different POV chapter just to explain why a character is this way, when actually those points end up getting recited in the novel just like that. Can I also say, don't. Or they end up having 1,000 flashbacks and little bits and pieces about this backstory mentioned to the point where it takes up a quarter of a novel. Can I just say, don't. I'm repeating this because it keeps happening over and over. I'm emphasizing my point. Big bulks of backstory slow down the real story. We do not want to stay in the past. We've got entire climaxes, battles, and character arcs to get to. If your backstory winds up taking up a decent chunk of the plot, you may have a problem with the backstory, a very big one. You need to simplify it, or find a different way to explain things when your backstory takes up so much of the plot and hinges on the reliance of it so much. You can easily just sub a flashback for just explaining your past in a few sentences. We do not need to know the weather on the day that your dad installed the biggest moral message of your life. With all that being said, I think the main reason authors get super obsessed with backstories is that they're failing to notice the actual important part of the story. The main fucking plotline.
Whoa, really? I had no idea.
If you spend more time fleshing out a character's backstory than you do fleshing out the actual story that you're planning on writing, you may be in fact writing the wrong story. If your backstory has many crucial events that a character changes from and learns lessons from, then that's basically where the story should be starting, right before that. Because in a sense, your character has already developed a ton. So the novel that you're writing the backstory for almost sounds like the final installment in their actual story. Simply put, and a point that I missed in writing my script for my other backstory video, your character's backstory should be the most boring and mundane thing that happens in their life. It can be predictable, it can be cliche, it can be very subpar. The story afterward would be so more exciting, insightful, and traumatic
if you're as evil an author as me.
And of course, it's going to change your character significantly. You want your character to, when they die, think back to the events that happened in your story or series before they pass on. After all, a house is not just a foundation. Let's focus a little bit more on the walls, windows, and roof of your story, shall we? And that's why your backstories are shit. Okay, maybe that was a little bit harsh. If you did enjoy this video, be sure to give it a thumbs up and subscribe if you are new around here. You can ring that bell to find out when I post more creative content every weekend. Check out ASTER'S CODA Exposure. I mentioned my girl Abby Tacker in this video earlier, and you can read her story here. Not her backstory, her story, as she dives into the three worlds and has to face an otherworldly blood feud. And while you're down in the description, you can check out my Instagram, my Fiverr, my TikTok, and my website. Stay creative, everybody, and I'll be seeing you in the next video.